What's going on, everyone? This is Zephan Blacksburg from the Year of Purpose podcast, and today I have Doug Sandler. Now, Doug is also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and he created Nice Guys Finish First in an environment where too often people accept average as the norm when it comes to customer service. And way too often, companies accept average from their sales and customer service departments. His philosophy, built on 30 years of industry experience, has always been to set huge expectations and exceed them. Doug shares his message all over the country with organizations and individuals in need of building more solid relationships with their customers. As an expert, Doug is a highly demanded speaker, best-selling author, and Huffington Post blogger specializing in exceeding expectations. He will prove to you that why nice guys and girls finish first. So Doug, it's great to have you here today, and I think that we have such an awesome topic to talk about because we have so many newbie startups and newbie entrepreneurs, and this is such an important thing to have or skill to have is, customer service, right?
I think so. I think so. First of all, Zephan, thanks so much for having me on the show. I know that we've exchanged a lot of information back and forth over the last couple of weeks, so I appreciate your patience in getting me here. Yeah, I think that today, more than ever, with social media as big as it is, I think it's really, really important for us to focus on the human element of building a business and not just the technical element of how to grow a network. So, sure, relationships and communication are key today.
And I've been seeing this kind of when I go to networking events now, is we've gotten into this bad habit of, because I gave you my business card, all of a sudden I expect all this work to come in. And I think that we've gotten into this really poor place where we're not building these relationships. It's just like, hey, here's my name, buy my stuff.
Well, as I go into companies, and you make an excellent point, as I go into companies today, the thing that I stress to them is when you go to a networking meeting, and one of my programs that I teach is Networking 101. So as you go into this networking event, the idea behind it is not to go in there expecting to close a deal. All you're doing really is you don't want to collect cards. You're not looking to gain numbers. It's not like you're building a social media platform on Twitter and you're just trying to take as many followers as you possibly can. When you're in a networking meeting, if I walked out of there with one business card and one potential blossoming relationship, then I feel like I've done my job. All I really want to do when I go in there is just go in there and be me. If I hand out cards, great. If I don't hand out cards, I don't look at that as a failure. I just look at that as an opportunity where I just didn't see anybody that I was particularly interested in meeting. There's always an opportunity for you to present your goods and your services later. If you're asked about it, that's terrific. But in the meantime, build a relationship. Get to know somebody.
And why do you think so many people are so concerned with just going straight for the money or for the gig? Why don't they even try to build this relationship?
I think what happens is we are in an instant society, especially with technology where it is today. We can go and do a research on pretty much anything that we want to. So we click to buy now. So it's not click to sell now. It's click to buy now. So most people, especially some of the younger people that are in business today, and when I say younger, I really mean anybody that's younger than 40, let's say, they approach it in a slightly different way. I'm 50 years old, and when I first started, and I don't mean to come at you from an angle of, well, I'm 50 and I know everything. I don't. I'm learning every day. I'm learning all about technology and how it can help us. But way back when, it was more of a let's get to know you. Let's build a relationship. Let's see what develops. Those have been the clients that have stayed with me the longest. The ones that are just a quick hit. As soon as a cheaper price comes along, they're gone.
Right. And that's kind of been the same experience for me as well, as the people who, I've gotten to know their families or learn more about their personal life too. They're the ones who keep coming back month after month and want to work with me. So I definitely resonate with that. When it comes to this sort of customer service role, because this is really a role that all business owners and entrepreneurs have to take, do you have like a foundation that you teach people? Because I went to Zappos and I visited them, and they have the ability that if like someone calls in and says their dog died, they can like send you flowers in a card. And I can't exactly keep track of A, all my clients, and B, do stuff like that.
Yes.
So is there this like set of principles or somewhere where I should start?
Yeah, and they're pretty simple. And it's funny you mentioned Zappos because on this journey that I've taken over the last 30 years, more specifically in the last few years, and really focusing on customer service and the things that make a successful business, I visited Zappos as well. We were out on a trip in Las Vegas, and a bunch of the guys that I was with who work at the office that I work in, they all decided together, hey, let's go see what the Zappos thing is all about. And I was blown away by their culture because I did not think that a culture like that could exist with multiple people. I knew it could when you're a solopreneur, there's a couple of people that are in your company, you can create this bond. I had no idea it could work with thousands or hundreds of people in that particular case in their Las Vegas location. Yeah, so to get back at your question at hand, what foundation is there? I'm going to lay out a couple of really, really simple guidelines that you can follow, that anybody can follow in order to do it. And there's no rocket science attached to this. It's just the reality of how I built my business. I built my business by telling the truth. I built my business by returning my phone calls, and I built my business by being a nice guy. That was the cornerstones, the three of the triangle. That's where I started building my business. And what had happened was I discovered as I was returning my phone calls, being a nice guy and telling the truth, I discovered that not everybody did those three things. So if you just get down to those foundations of those three items along the way in your journey, especially in the beginning, how critical it is it for you to follow the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. In a nutshell, what I'm saying is be a nice guy,
Yeah.
because you want everybody to be nice to you. It makes sense that you should tell the truth because good, bad, or indifferent, it's very important for you to tell the truth to, especially if you're in a sales position or a position to promote your products. If you see a customer or potential customer that you don't have the perfect fit for your product, don't try to crowbar your product in there. It's better to say, you know what, I don't think we're a great fit. That would be a very, very beneficial thing for the person that you're saying it to and for you, because you're not taking on a client that's going to be trouble down the road when they discover your product isn't what it should be for them. Really, and the last thing of just returning your phone calls, being responsive. Before we had email and text messaging, it was just return your calls because there was no email.
Right.
So I've expanded that a little. Return your emails, return your text messages, return any level of communication. But if you do those three things, return your calls, be a nice guy, and tell the truth, you will find that you will be miles ahead of your competition, and you're doing nothing other than what would be, to me, common sense.
And telling the truth was really something that I experienced even when I was working in my position at Apple. Although I was in tech support, every now and then you jump in to help the salespeople if it's around the holiday season or whatnot and it gets too busy. And I would have people come in and say, convince me, like, why do I need to buy this, right? And
Right.
I'm like, well, I don't need to convince you. Like, if you're an Android person and that's what you love, then I'm going to tell you don't buy it. And it was funny because they would get so confused because it's almost like they want to give you this challenge.
Well, what's interesting about it, and you say that, and it's great because you really do. Most people that are new in position of selling or servicing a customer, especially let's say in the Apple store, when people walk in, they already kind of know what their approach is going to be with you. Are they going to be a pain in the rear end and try to give you a hard time and say, "Oh, I'm an Android user"? I'm not going to fight that. That's your opinion. It's great, right, wrong, or whatever. It's your opinion, and I'm not going to dispute that. What's really important is that you just kind of work along with whatever personality type that they have. So if they're not a buyer, then far be it for me to try to sell anybody to anything. I'd much rather be a consultant anyway. It's so much easier to be a consultant and take the commodity out of the sale.
Right. Well, so let me ask you about this whole Mr. Nice Guy thing because I'm just curious. Did you ever get to experience or even make the mistake of not being Mr. Nice Guy and seeing the poor results that come from that? Or is it more of you've seen a lot of other people doing this and you can kind of say, well, here's like the 10 biggest issues that come out of that?
Well, what happened was I was given the title of Mr. Nice Guy. I can't remember who gave it to me, but I think I was speaking at one point, and my book has been called Nice Guys Finish First, so somebody just coined me as Mr. Nice Guy. I, even to today, have a tough time when put in an adversarial role, meaning somebody is conflicting with something that I have to say, or somebody wants to be argumentative. I really have to step back. One of the things that I'm working on as an individual is just trying to figure out where my hot points are so that I don't go off the cuff and just start, blasting, because my initial instinct when somebody is confrontational with me is for me to be confrontational back. I don't want to be that way. It just is something that's within me, and you try to break some bad habits. So although I am coined Mr. Nice Guy, it's you never want to be on my bad side, because although I won't argue back with you, I'm going to stand my ground. You ask me to do you a favor and I will help you, to make it happen. You tell me what you're going to need me to do, and all of a sudden I'm going to firmly plant my feet and just, try to be resistant. I don't know why I do it. I just do.
I think that's something that I get too, because, I would like to think that I'm Mr. Nice Guy like 99% of the time.
Right.
But just like you, if somebody kind of calls me out on something and I know that it's not true or not, of my character, I'm the first person to fire right back. And it's not fun.
Yeah, well, and you appear, as I'm sure you have been in the communication that what we've had, you appear to be a great guy and a nice guy, and your whole program is based upon that. So it's very challenging to envision you in a confrontational role. Although you never know what sets off people's hot buttons. And one of the things that sets me off is when somebody just it's obvious that they're not telling me the truth. They tell me one thing and then they do another. And for me, it's very, very challenging. Because I'm in such a position of service. I've had an experience recently, and I won't get into names or anything, but I had an experience recently with a company that I'm doing some work with, and I pay them a lot of money. And all I wanted them to do was just be responsive. I said, hey, I don't necessarily even care about the performance, whether your product or service does exactly what it's all, it's subjective, whether it works or not. So for me, I just kept saying, I just want you to be responsive. Just follow up with me. And they just could not get that through. And finally, what it came down to was I said to them, have you read my book? I mean, I wrote a book about customer service and providing exemplary service. This is what I am all about. If you care about me, I'll provide you a free copy of my book. Read my book and understand why I think the way that I think, and you'll figure out that business really needs to be more customer focused, not product focused.
Yeah, I mean, this was something, and I hate to bring up Apple all the time, but they focused on the person, and they wouldn't try to sell you this new phone because it's a bigger screen. They tried to sell you this new phone because the bigger screen allowed you to, video chat with your grandkids that are halfway across the planet. So they were focused on what you get out of this, not necessarily here's this cool shiny new feature.
I love that. Focus on you, focus on them, focus on you, meaning focus on the customer. Don't focus on the product itself. And I agree. I agree with that. I try to figure out sometimes what like the iPad was really created for. Some of the products I walk in there, I'm like, do they really need that? I mean, it kind of is just like a big phone,
Yeah,
but
right.
They have their reasons, they have their marketing, and they've determined what it is that people buy, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I think that there is one thing on people's minds at this point, though, in talking about this is, I love that you turned around Nice Guys finished last and made it first, because they do finish first. And my concern with it is that how do we make sure that we're not pushovers and that people don't just step all over us, being that nice person, being that person who wants to, give of our time and our resources to help other people?
I think if you stay within a system, regardless of what that system is, I have a system. It's invest time, energy, resources, and people, inspire them to take action, and then actually execute whatever you had laid out for them. I think that along the way, being a nice guy does make you a big target for people that want to take advantage of your time and take advantage of your resources and take advantage of your knowledge. But you just have to just stick to your ground, stick to your business plan. It doesn't mean that you have to be a yes guy. I am certainly by no means a pushover, as you probably have seen through an email exchange that we've had. Sure. I'm just not a guy that says, you ask me a question, I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. If I think that it's within my wheelhouse and I feel like it would be beneficial for you and I feel like it would be beneficial for me at the same time, then we're going to work on a plan together. But in no way, shape, or form does a nice guy mean that you're being a yes man or a pushover at all.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go along with everything that comes our way, which I
You're
think
not
is...
going to. You're not going to. One of the things in my 51, I wrote a blog probably about a year and a half or so ago, 51 lessons about life that you've learned. One of the lessons that I've learned is not everyone is a customer, and that's a good thing. You really have the ability And the other thing is you can actually fire a client too.
I've
So
done that.
sure, I mean, it's a good experience. If
Yeah.
somebody doesn't fit your mold, then so be it. You're not for me. And as long as you do it in a nice way, in a respectful way, I think that people appreciate when you're open and honest and you're forthright in what you are and what you provide. If you aren't the perfect fit, say no. If you don't feel like you have the ability to commit to a project, say no. Because what's going to end up happening is if you become a yes guy, but you're a yes guy with no follow through, then you're really hurting yourself, your reputation. And if you look at the big picture, you're doing yourself an injustice by being a yes guy. While you think that you're being helpful, you might be temporarily helpful, but in the long run, you're going to be hurting yourself.
Absolutely. And you'll get burnout or overload because you've just taken on way too many things.
Right.
Now, speaking of burnout, because this is kind of where I was when I decided to follow things I was more passionate about. I know this is something that you speak on a little bit as well as, how do we find our passion? Because, there's I hate that all these people are just like, yeah, find your purpose. Well, guess what? Your purpose changes all the time. And so, how do we find our passion, at least in the now or for the next, 6 months to a year, and what we want to follow in life, at least for the time being?
I think that's the $64,000 question
Yeah.
is how do you find, before you clicked on the record button, I said, what's the trick? You're in the podcast business. I'm in the podcast business too. You have many, many more listeners than I do. And I said to you, what's the trick? And you can't exactly point out, well, this is how you get more listeners. You work hard and you keep your head down and you focus on the things that are important to you. I think if I had to answer the question with 100% accuracy for me, I started to move in the direction that I was happiest. I knew that a position of service where I'm able to serve others, help other people, that made me happy. When I can see something that I'm doing for someone and it's making them happy and helping them, I truly feel like that is what my purpose is. And I'm not saying that in a philanthropic way. I'm saying that almost in a selfish way. My feeling is I love helping people. It's great if I can teach somebody how to do what I've done, how to build a business and how to be successful at building a business, then that it's going to make them money. And in turn, they're going to want to share some of their experience with people that are in my life, and they're going to make me happy. They're going to pay me. You do something well enough, people will have to pay you to get you to teach them how to do what you've just done. So for me, this 30-year journey of building an entertainment business was all of the setup that I needed to start the speaking business a couple of years ago, which is pretty much when I got started in the speaking business. So finding your passion, that is a challenging question. It's one of those things that I can tell you what you don't do. You don't stay in an environment that you're not happy in. Oftentimes by eliminating the unhappy things in your life, and that can be personally also. If you're in a relationship that's going nowhere, it's time to get out of it. If you have a friendship that is acidic or that is not good for you, then you get out of it. If you're working a job that you dread going to every day, I was in the mortgage business in the early 90s, and while I loved helping people being able to get to the point where they were able to settle on a home, the problem was all of the process that you had to go through in order to get there. The meeting of the real estate agents, the taking of the application, the underwriting process, everything else, the getting the business suit on. I'm not a suit guy.
Me
So,
neither.
so yeah, right. So for me, one day I woke up, I got out of bed, I put my suit on. I got a really bad stomach ache. I got back in bed with my suit and my shoes still on, put the covers over, and I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. And that was probably the last day that I went into the mortgage business. You just have to gravitate towards the things that you love doing. And if you don't, you're going to be so unhappy. And the other problem is you're going to make the people around you miserable too. It's really hard to be unhappy at a job and still be a happy guy. And if you're only a TGI Friday guy or a working for the weekend or, hey, hump day is here, only 5 more days till the weekend, you're wasting, 5/7 of your life. You may as well enjoy. I get out of bed every morning. I'm excited to get in front of this computer to do the things I'm doing and have meetings and to do stuff like this. I love this. I mean, this for me, I could do this 24/7. It'd be nice to be able to create an income out of it. But until I do, I'm just going to keep doing this. It will eventually happen, I'm sure.
Yeah. And speaking of, knowing that in the future that will eventually happen for you, because this is something that I come across way too often now is people say, well, I'm really passionate about, let's just say photography, right? But then there's this whole money aspect of they've been working in this job that's been paying them squat for the last, three,
Right.
4, 10 years, whatever. And they now have to, if they really want to do this, go out and buy $1,000 camera. How do you approach uh, that, getting towards that passion and starting to work in that passion when money is kind of the obstacle? I mean,
And money is always the obstacle. You see,
yeah,
that's the problem. People look at this and they just say, and let's use this a great example that you've already set up. They set it up. They're a photographer. They love taking photos. They have to spend $1,000 on a camera if they want to get to the next level of where their photography will take them. But they have to work this full-time job that they don't like, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I get to do it full-time? I don't really even know how the steps are. What the steps are. And I always tell everybody, well, tell me a little bit about how you're treating this not like a hobby then. Are you just going out on the weekends and taking photos thinking, well, it's going to make its way to the internet and somebody will see it and I'll get on YouTube and I'll get a million hits and somebody will pay me for that. It doesn't happen that way. Maybe one in a million it happens that way. Join a professional association. Find a photographer that's done what you've done, has been through the same process you've been. Pick up the phone book, or is there a phone book anymore? Pick up the internet.
pick up the internet.
Pick up the internet and look for somebody that is in your area that's a photographer. If you called me, Zephan, and you said to me, listen, I really want to learn about being a professional speaker. How do I do it? I would consider it an honor for somebody to think enough about me to say, can you help me? Now, there's enough people out there that are jerks that would say, pound sand, I'm not helping you. But there are plenty of us that want to help because we know that a guy like you, when you get to a point where you're speaking every week and you're traveling all across the country, when that speaking opportunity arises that you say, I'm not a good fit for this, but I know this Sandler guy, Mr. Nice Guy, that would be good. You plan enough of those relationships and connect enough people, it'll work for you. So to get back to the answer really of the question, how do you change something that you can't, you're in that golden handcuffs. You need the money, your income provides it the job, but you love this other thing. Stop treating it as a hobby, treat it like a second job. And eventually it will become that thing that will take over it. As a DJ, when I first started DJing, I was in the mortgage business, I was in the building business, and then that passion for DJing really started to grow. I discovered over maybe a 10-year period of time that my 1 day a week of working 4 hours was creating more income than my 40 hours a week over here in the mortgage and the building business. So I had a decision to make at some point. Okay, now, just don't look at it and say, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow so I can be a professional photographer. Do it the smart way. Find other people, follow them, see what they're all about, learn what they have done, do what they have done, and you will become a professional photographer if it's your passion.
Yeah, and I mean, this just comes to mind. One of the things that I did with starting my business that I've really found to be helpful was not only joining the professional associations, but also, in a sense, making your own. So I started just a Facebook group, and I invited 5 other videographers to this group, and I just called it Videographers Connection. And that was a year ago, and I now have over 200 people in it.
Wow.
And these are people who have referred me work, who have, rented out my equipment, who have
Totally.
sold me equipment. And it was surprising because this was something, A, that was free. It costed me nothing.
Right.
B, I was able now to start these sort of networking happy hours and get a bunch of other people together that are in my industry, and see it builds those relationships that help you along the way. So, I mean, just a little tidbit of advice there for anyone listening.
That's
I
great.
mean, create your own group, because sometimes there's plenty of networking groups out there, but if you make your own, you're also kind of seen as not necessarily the expert, but the leader of the group. And then you're kind of the go-to person when it's like, oh, I have a video shoot, need an extra person. Oh, well, Zephan's the first person I think of.
But what's interesting about what you're saying is I'm sure you weren't the guy that created the group and then went away. What I think happened probably, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Zephan, but I think probably what happened is you created the book and then you cultivated the group. You started working every angle that you could to get people to become participants in the group. Assuming you just didn't open up the page and say, I'm open, and then walk away? Is that...
Oh yeah, I mean we started doing monthly just like happy hour meetup type things. Whenever I was at networking events or met other videographers, I'd tell them go on Facebook, search for this, you'll find it. You should totally join us. So
Right.
I kind of became an advocate for it. And on top of that, because it's just on Facebook, it was so easy to just take like an article in our industry and post it there once a day or every other day. So
Yep.
people are constantly seeing this as they
That's
go
like your
through their
blog.
feed.
That's like your blog. Once you expert at your industry, people will want more of you. They'll want more information. I've been writing a blog almost for 2 years, every week, with a podcast twice a week, with a video training program and online lessons and a book. If I am not perceived as the expert now, I'm doing something wrong. So your job is to make yourself an expert. Everybody wants information from the expert, especially if it's free. If you're providing free content, wow, people love that. And what will happen is, as a result of that, people will hire you to do stuff for them because they know you're the expert and the go-to guy in the industry.
Yeah, and the best part is you don't have to start out as the expert. It's this path where you learn along the way and
Right.
you just add value to others wherever you can. And ultimately, it's weird because one day you kind of wake up and people just consider you the go-to person
Well,
for
right.
it.
You can't make yourself the expert, and consider yourself the self-proclaimed expert, people will see you having an ego. But if somebody else says to you, "Well, hey, have you talked to Zeph? And he's the expert in this field," all of a sudden you really are the expert at it. So, yeah, the approach you've taken the right approach, and it sounds like you've done everything. You're the one that people should be taking lessons from.
Yeah.
You're great. You're great at it.
So let's talk about taking lessons from Mr. Nice Guy and maybe tell me a little bit about you wrote this book, Nice Guys Finish First. When did this get launched?
Well, the idea. Do you want to hear the story about how the book was written, or you just want to hear post writing the book after the book came out? What would be better for you?
Well, let's summarize a little bit about how the book was written. Maybe there's, a tidbit of information in there that people would
Sure.
like.
Well, I was intimidated by the idea of writing a book, but I also knew that a speaker, which is really the profession that I wanted to start to really evolve into, the speaking business, in order to start to make bigger fees in the speaking business, you need a book. And to make it bigger speaking fees, you need a best-selling book. So I'm thinking, oh, crap, I got to not only write a book, but I got to write a bestseller. I'm like, how am I going to do that? So I met with actually somebody that was a member of my local synagogue, and they mentioned to me, let's see, how did it exactly go down? Oh, he was receiving my blog already because I had been writing a blog for about a year when he approached me, or I approached him, and he was asking me just about some equipment from my DJ business that he wanted to borrow. And he said, "Hey, have you ever spoken to my cousin Rob?" And I said, "I don't know who your cousin Rob is." So he said, "My cousin Rob has written 5 books, and my understanding from my cousin Rob, who's also a speaker, is that in order to be a good speaker, you really need to have a best-selling book, or you need to have a book." So I'm like, oh, "I'll talk to Rob. Okay, let's see what he's all about." So I talked to Rob, and Rob I hired probably on the spot and said, "Hey, can you help me write this book? Not as a ghostwriter, but can you help me just get my facts straight?" Rob, being an OCD kind of guy, is very systematic. So everything was ready to roll. And he said, "Sure, we can do this." So 2 weeks later, we sat down, we wrote the outline to this book. What was really significant in the impact for me was he said, "You don't have to write 200 pages," because that was the intimidating factor for me. And anybody listening, if you try to write 200 pages, it's going to be, huge
Yeah.
undertaking. But he broke it down into simple science for me. He said, "You don't need to write 200 pages. You need to write 10 pages a week for the next 20 weeks." And so when he said that, then the math started happening in my head. And I said, "I don't need to write 20 pages for the next, or 10 pages a week for 20 weeks. I really need to write a page and a half a day for the next 20 weeks. And all that came down to was about 500 or 600 words a day. And I said, I can do 500 or 600 words a day. I was already writing 1,000 to 2,000 words a week right now as a blog. So I'm like, I can
Yeah.
do that. So literally 95% of my book, well, I've been corrected recently. It's probably more like 50% of my book was written in Starbucks. But I like the story. 95% of my book was written in a Starbucks restaurant. The other half
That's a
was
name for another book.
yeah, maybe so. Some of it was written at my dining room table. The majority of my book was written in 20 weeks. I had about 175 pages. We took it to a couple of different publishers who turned it down, not because they didn't like the writing, but because the timing was off, as it sometimes is with publishers. And the third publisher said that they wanted it, which was great. And we really just started our Zoom from there. That was on December of last year, December of 2014. We scheduled the release for March 15th of 2015. The book came out a couple of weeks early in the end of February. By the end of March, we had a book that was number one in the category of customer service on Amazon. And really from there is when this whole spiraling effect upward started to happen. People started calling. They wanted me to come out and speak. People wanted me to guest blog for them. People wanted a piece of me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. They wanted to. I received some. I put up a post that just somebody helped me pick the two covers of my book. I had two design covers choices, and as of today, and people are still commenting on that, even though the book has been out since March. We have over 43,000 comments. Which it was crazy. I built the majority of my email list based upon that one post on LinkedIn. And had I not written that post, I'd still probably have a good list, but you never know where your business is going to come from. So the process of writing the book was great. I then went into a studio and did the audio version, which was totally cool, being in front of a microphone and being able to speak and hearing myself read my own book and listening back to it. Amazing. Just not amazing in terms of listening to myself speak, but just the process of the fact that, 3 years ago, Steph, I didn't know where I was going. And I was in a good career and I love my career, but I wasn't in the speaking business. I had no idea that I was going to be speaking or writing or anything. And it's just been what an amazing, 2.5 years or 2 years or so.
It's great because it solidifies your reality. It's one thing to have this book written, but I know that even just in exercises, sometimes people say write it on paper instead of typing it because your brain absorbs it better. I'm sure speaking this out loud really is kind of like your way of telling your brain, hey, like I made this. This is kind of awesome.
And what's really interesting about what you're saying is that when I go out and I speak, at the end when they pay me, I'm like, I just told my story. It's just me. I've just told my story. And yes, I put some lessons in there. I'm a storyteller. I don't like to tell systems kind of things. I do as a part of, because that's what people want to hear. They want to hear how the system is put together. But I just tell the story of how I got to be where I am. And a number of the stories I tell are basically about the failures that I have accomplished, the failures that I've achieved in my life. And it is amazing. You can fail your way into a successful position. And case in point, I'm a great example of somebody that has literally put everything I got into everything I do, and many failures along the way. And it's just been wonderful just to know that people even want to hear me. And then they pay me on top of that. I'm like, whoa, this is great. So I love that part.
And so just, lesson for everybody listening out there, look, telling the story of your failure and being able to create a profitable business out of it. Obviously there's tons of success here, right? This is not just like I just fail constantly and this is how it works. But
well, right, yeah, you have to learn the lesson from your failure. If you don't learn the lesson, you're just going to continue to fail. If you learn the lesson and you hear and you see what you've done, you've made some drastic errors. You've put too much money or too much time or too much energy or effort into one specific part, and your business failed as a result of it. Okay, well, pick up the pieces, learn your lesson, and move on. The thing is, you got to get back up again.
Yeah.
And enthusiastically get back up again. It's like, wow, that hurt. Okay, let's keep going. But don't look back. Take the rearview mirror off of your vision and just keep moving forward. I'm a true believer in that the things that you say to yourself will lead you to your destiny, will lead you to that path. And if you speak positively of yourself, then you will, without an ego, you don't want to present this and look how great a guy I am. And as I speak to audiences, my plan is never to get out there. And I have a very hard time when somebody congratulates me for anything, because I feel like, man, I've just put in my time and my effort. And yeah, I did fail through that. And that really hurt. But I learned a lesson from it. And the lesson was, hey, I can never lie again. I need to tell the truth to my clients. Or I've lost many deals through not returning phone calls and emails properly or on time. So you learn through your lesson that you need to return your calls and your emails on time. I've learned through lesson that you've got to fulfill your customers' expectations, not just what you think your customers' expectations are. So you need to ask them, So you have a very, very consultative role with your clients. And when you do that, your business becomes a whole different model. You're no longer selling, you're an advisor. And to become an advisor to people, it's okay to be human being and say, I really don't know. I don't know, but let's work on this thing together. If you work on it together and you come up with a solution together, they take ownership, you take ownership, and they get the credit. And that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had the greatest satisfaction when I've helped other people and still watch them get the credit for, because at the end of the day, they did the work. They put the work in. I was just kind of giving them the handbook of like, here's how you could do this.
And they know the secret. They know the secret behind the scenes was you, and it doesn't necessarily need to be something that has to be verbalized. If it is, then great. And if you get the accolades or the reward or the Rising Star Award or whatever it is, wonderful. But if you don't, you've done a job, well done.
That's excellent. And thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story and how this book has come to life. And I'd love if you could share with everybody. I know you've got some great resources online and where they could find Nice Guys Finish First and your website link and things like that.
Yep, that's great. If they welcome to go to my website, which is DougSandler.com, and all of the information about everything that I have, my online training program and my book and my speaking is all right there. So that's probably the easiest spot to go. I also have a post that I put every week up on Huffington Post, and that's fun to see a whole bunch of people all over the world read my stuff. I have a weekly blog. They're welcome to subscribe to that and get information. I tend to be all over the place with my blog. This week I wrote about I don't even remember what I wrote about, and I just hit the send button. I wrote a book about, I wrote a blog about taking the training wheels off in life and just kind of, getting on your own. Stop wearing the training wheels. It's time to move on. So I write a weekly blog, and I love that. But DougSandler.com is the easiest way to get any information about my stuff.
Perfect. And I highly encourage everyone listening in to check out Nice Guys Finish First. You say it's on Amazon and you recorded audio, so there's an audiobook version somewhere.
Yep, right on Amazon. The audio is there. It's Kindle, paperback, and an audio version on Audible. Yeah, I think they can go to Audible too, but easiest spot is just to go to Amazon if they want to get a copy of the book.
Awesome.